r/AskReddit. My blind date gave me an IQ test on the spot. When he found out that I had a good score, he said he won't be able to date me because I'm too smart for him and I will end up making his life miserable. Reddit. Do you have any WTF date stories? It was my freshman year of college and I had started dating this 23-year-old. He took me to Wendy's for a date because neither of us had a lot of money. He had one of those monotone voices and could drone on and on and on about nothing. He was telling one such story when I swallowed my water the wrong way and started coughing. This was still a date, so at first I tried to politely expel the water, but to no avail. As he continued to talk, I started hacking all over the table. Tears were streaming down my face. Water was dribbling down my chin, and I was pounding my own back at a futile attempt to get the devil water out of my system. He kept talking. Trying to hold the water in at first was a bad idea. I could not stop coughing. I bent down under the table, hoping the angle would make it easier to cough up the liquid. Everybody in the whole restaurant was staring at me in silence, except for my date, of course. He was still telling his story. I finally finished hacking up my lungs and tried to listen to the rest of his story. I had no idea what he was talking about. He continued with his anecdote unfazed by my wet, red face and smeared makeup. When he finally finished, I apologized for my coughing fit and explained that I had swallowed my water the wrong way, to which he replied, "Oh, I was wondering what was wrong with you. Dot. Sounds autistic to me. Edit. Not sure why this is getting downvoted. It's not an insult. I'm a special ed teacher, and common traits in the autistic spectrum are the inability to read social cues. Specifically, someone on the spectrum might talk about something that interests them without noticing that the other person is bored or wants a turn to talk or is choking to death. Till choking to death is a social cue. I went on a date with a guy who said he was getting into the elements, and slowly has developed the ability to control fire. Edit. I met him on OkCupid after a serious breakup, and we talked for like 2 weeks. Seemed completely normal. He was a cello player, and pretty smart from what I could tell. We decided to meet at a Starbucks and convo was good until he started talking doing impression of the Joker. I'm already freaked out at this point and ready to leave. Then he asked me why I hadn't drank my coffee yet, and I said it was still hot, and he apologized, because he was in control of the heat fire around us. I was intrigued at how ridiculous this was and let him continue. He told me he first learned of this when he was in his car and the car windows steamed up. I was trying so hard not to laugh. I politely said, well, this was fun, but I need to get to work. This was my first online date. Won't do that again. I can control fire. Most I use matches to start them, and water to put them out. So you can control water too? Everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. I once went on a date with this girl. We started with a movie. After the movie finished, as we were pulling out of the parking lot, she saw her father leaving the same movie with a woman who wasn't her mother. Yikes, that sounds like a horrible position to be in. Still better than the guy who got his brother-in-law's wife pregnant. Honestly, that is a genius way to get out of a boring date. This was actually legit. Her parents ended up getting a divorce. Or maybe you didn't get the hint, so that was the only option. Dad, I need to get rid of some guy who won't take a hint. Could you ask mum for a divorce? No, seriously. Dad, this guy is a complete loser. You gotta take one for your little girl. I went out with this girl 4 or 5 times, but this was the first time I picked her up from her house. When I went to drop her off, there was an extra car in the driveway. I said that she had never mentioned having a roommate, and asked when she was going to introduce me. She said, oh, no, that's my husband's car. I once had a blind date walk into the restaurant wearing a burqa niqab. She was not Muslim, but wanted us to have a conversation without me knowing what she looked like. Kind of a WTF moment or something out of a TV show. But I saw her point. I ended up disliking her based on her personality. EDT. U/God's Fordham is pointed out that since I saw her eyes, the article of clothing was a niqab, not a burqa. Should have let her know that there's a thing called the internet where you can talk to people you will never see. Failing that, there's always the phone. I, for one, would duck the ship out of a girl who owns a just because burqa. Well damn, if I had her number, I'd hook you up. I was on second date. This guy said he wanted to cook something elaborate for me. I met him at his house. He shows me his freezer and asks me to pick a frozen dish which he then puts in the microwave for me. Seriously, WTF material. Thank God that's all he had in his freezer. I expected a body or something. This sounds like something cute that a guy would do in a movie, but it was probably pretty lame. Know your audience. Execution. Be attractive, don't be unattractive. Not on a second date. After our first date, he gave me a verbal report card in the car. One of my negatives was that I took too small of bites. Apparently my good table manners made him nervous, but one of my positives was that it seemed like I liked to be in the kitchen. About 2 hours after the date he called me to tell me that he had looked through my entire Facebook and read all of my blog. He had decided that I was cooler than he'd thought on our date, so he called the girl he had plans with the next night and dumped her to hang out with me more. Needless to say, there was no second date. Female. Upon further inspection, I have decided that your specifications meet my expectations. Report tomorrow for dinner and I shall continue your evaluation. A guy's dad doused me with holy water before our first date to make sure I wasn't a demon. If someone's dad did that to me, I'd be compelled to start screaming, "It burns. It burns." As a demon, this is terrifying. I always knew you Amish were hiding something. I went out with a really gorgeous girl who I didn't know was bipolar and off her meds. She wanted to drive, so we took her car. We went to dinner, which was fine, and then a movie, where she got more and more agitated and then excused herself. I thought she was going to a bathroom, then said out loud, "No, she's bugging out," and walked out and found her in the parking lot searching for her car. She screamed at me that I'd been making fun of her. The people in the theater had been making fun of her, and the people in the movie had been making fun of her. I got her calmed down and got her home, and on the way found out that she was bipolar. She had stopped taking her meds. She was into self-harm. She beat her face black and blue right there in the car, and the car was stolen. She kept calling after that asking when we were going to go out again. Nope, nope, nope. The car being stolen is the cherry that makes this story truly fantastic. After the rest of the story I was like, oh, a stolen car. Men. I have horrible self-esteem and date losers. Divorced over 10 years. Went on a date with some internet dude and he wanted me to stay over. Fine. But no way was I putting out with this one on the first date. Okay, fine. He says, "Why don't you come with me to the bathroom and make out while I jerk off?" This has become a go-to line with my friends. I went on a first date with this guy who seemed really sweet. We went out to a really classy dinner. The food was great. The atmosphere was fantastic. But at the end of the main course, he whipped out his phone and started showing me pictures he'd taken of his bic. Like, different angles, lighting, dynamic effects. I rode with him to the restaurant, so I had to sit next to him on the ride home and fight the urge to fling the door open and tuck and roll. Have bic pics ever worked for anyone? Edit. There are entirely too many bics in my inbox. Edit 2. I swear to Christ on a cracker that I'm not Anthony Weiner or Brett Favre. Let me show you a picture of my dog. Oh, what are these? How did these pictures of my bic get in here? Do you see this? That's so crazy. What do you think? Nope. He should have just tried naked man. You actually took the test? You're right. I could have been his wife if I just said, "What's an IQ test?" I quote the always relevant John Green. The Venn diagram of boys who don't like smart girls and boys you don't wanna date is a circle. If this guy's looking for someone dumber than he is, he's going to die a virgin. I'm white. I went out with an Indian girl twice who constantly talked about how India was so much nicer than the United States. How Indian culture is far superior to Western culture, and how Indian guys much more refined and attractive than white men. And then she dumped me for being white. What? Sounds like she dated you briefly to piss off her parents. If she really wanted to piss off her parents, she would have dated a black guy. If she was Hindu and wanted to piss off her parents, she would date a Muslim. I dated a girl for a couple weeks, went back to her place, started opening up to each other for the first time. Conversation was something like this. She got into talking about her family, her talking about her bipolar mother, Her talking about her probably being bipolar because of it. Her talking about how she has no luck with men because she gets overly emotional. Her crying about it while I try to console her. Her accusing me of being just like every other guy that is going to leave her. Her yelling at me with tears streaming down her face to get the duck out of her house because I'm an a-hole. This whole transformation took about 15-20 minutes. She also messaged me a week later asking where we should go on another date. I'm usually a sucker for helping people in need, but that is one case I am just not qualified to deal with. Yep, I had a similar experience. She would flip back and forth from calling me an a-hole and punching me to climbing in my lap, kissing me and grinding against my business. I didn't even know her. She'd flip back and forth without any kind of trigger I could identify every 15-20 minutes. She had shown up drunk at my house. A total mess. I drove her home as she alternated between pulling her top down and flashing people on Labray to flopping my lap and trying to give me a blowjob. I ended up stuck at her place all night dealing with her love-hate cycles. Thanks. Match.com. That really sounds a lot like borderline personality disorder. And with other mental illness within her family, there's a good chance of her having it. Once I went on a first date and the guy told me that I seem great. He just had one concern. I'm not saying you're fat, but I'm worried you will gain weight and not be attractive to me anymore. I was 110 pounds at the time, and I was eating a salad. Then in the car, he asked me for a beach please. I wonder about men who disrespect women, then want to place their penises between the aggrieved party's teeth. He asked you for a BJ on the first date? Yep, sounds like a real class act. I had a gal ask me what I looked for in a partner. She seemed annoyed that my answer was rather general, and proceeded to pull out her list. It was 8 typed pages. She started going through them and giving me check marks. I didn't get very many. 9/10 dates I've been hooked up with via dating sites have all started out with the woman saying a variation of the following. I'm not looking for a boyfriend. I'm just looking for a friend. Now I know I'm not the best looking dude out there, but come on. You've already seen my pic. Recent too. And we met through a dating website for the purpose of dating, not hanging out. I liked this girl for a long time, but she lived with her boyfriend. When they finally broke up and she kicked him out of the house, I told her I'd really like to date her once she'd had some time to recover from the breakup. And she said she'd love to. For the next month or so she'd send me flirty texts, pics of her blowing me kisses, etc. But there was always some excuse for why we couldn't go back to her house. Finally I found out from her friend that her boyfriend was still living there and they were still having sex, but they were technically broken up somehow. When I called her out and asked why she would respond the way she did when I was so explicit about my intentions, she said, I thought you meant, like, go out on dates as friends. This happened to me as well, except it was 5 months of dating. I still look back sometimes and just say out loud, what the duck? Both men and women will do that, have one as a spare thing. It's cruel. You were lucky that you figured it out. The only blind internet date I ever went on, in 1993 no less. He took me out for dinner and a movie. We saw Schindler's List at the Dollar Theater. No lie, his choice. Afterwards, he told me he didn't believe the Holocaust happened. Dinner was at Burger King. My meal of chicken tenders and a small fry cost under $4 at the time afterwards. I bid him good evening and he complained that I didn't put out because he bought me dinner. Hell, even if I did it for a living I'd charge more than $4. I didn't stick around to go watch Apollo 13 and find out if he thought the moon landing was faked, and perhaps eventually barter my favors for an entire extra value meal. My self-esteem in college was low, but not that low. I had recently started dating this guy and we were on our way to Circuit City to browse around for a few things he needed for his computer. While in the car on the way there, an annoying techno song came on and I commented on how I couldn't stand how often they played it on the radio. He turned it up a bit, telling me that he liked the song. I laughed and jokingly said, okay, well I'm not talking to you until this song finishes. I smiled at him and looked away, just enjoying the car ride. We park the car and I immediately sense that something is wrong. He's walking a few paces in front of me, clearly trying to avoid walking side by side. I let it go and run to catch up to him. I take his arm and kiss him on the cheek and proceed to walk to the store with him. Again, he seems distant. I ask him what's wrong and he tells me he's fine. I let it go and decide to enjoy the shopping we were there to do. We're browsing through the store and suddenly I realize that he's nowhere to be seen. It's around 7 PM at the time and the store was pretty crowded. I figure he must have wandered to another aisle and I do the same. 15 minutes later, there is still no sight of him at all. I'm walking through the store searching for him and nothing. It's now 8 PM. I call his cell phone and it rings out. I walk out to the car and it's empty. There are about 6 other stores in the complex and I wasn't about to walk to each one searching for him. It's now 8:45 and I'm getting scared. The store closes at 9, so there aren't that many people there. Finally, the store is closing and I walk out to the nearly empty parking lot. There he is, sitting in the car. I run over with tears in my eyes asking what happened. He looks at me calmly and says, "Now you know how it feels when the lines of communication have been cut." Edit. This happened in 2007 or 2008. It was the closing sale for Circuit City. I'm aware they don't exist anymore. This happened a long time ago. Whoa. Tell me you dumped him right after? This guy is an abuser. Abuser? He sounds like a ducking serial killer. Damn mosquito. Hold still. Slap. Got it. Hey, what's wrong? Come on. I didn't slap your arm that hard. Jim, oh my god. Jim, put down the knife. Jim, what the duck? Now you will know how it feels when a helpless being is mercilessly slaughtered. Goodness me, he has some issues.